A productive day starts with a productive morning. And what better way to start your day than to wake up in your minimally decorated bedroom, grab your uniformly colored t-shirt and head to the kitchen to make coffee. If you've ever searched for productivity advice on YouTube, one channel you've definitely come across is Melaugh. Matt is one of the most successful creators in the space, and for good reason. He's a great filmmaker, he's a self-professed productivity nerd, he's a minimalist, and he's also a pretty funny guy. And since I like to learn from the best, I've set out to do an experiment today. I'm going to implement as many productivity tips as possible today that I learned from Matt. Starting with 2 that I've already done. See how I prepared the day before. I made sure that in the morning my clothes, my t-shirt were already laid out and ready for me to go. And the same in the kitchen. As soon as I walk in, everything I need to make my morning coffee is already there. Now lately I've gotten used to having tea rather than coffee in the morning. But since this is a Melaugh inspired video and he seems to be a bit of a coffee addict, here we are. The coffee leads us to the next tip. This is part of the productivity routine, and I'm using this coffee to trigger myself into work mode. So this is not the very first thing I do in the morning, following Matt's tips obviously. So something like brushing my teeth, going to the gym happens first, because the idea is the moment I set this down on my desk, that means work has started. Our next tip is this. Matt dedicates 30 minutes at the beginning of each day to organize the workday. So instead of diving headfirst into some random piece of work, 30 minutes to organize email, calendar, and a to-do list with the 3 to 5 most important tasks for the day. Matt uses a task manager called To-Do or To-Do, kind of sounds French. I'm gonna call it To-Do because I'm too lazy to look up if there's an official way to say this. This is the app he uses. I've never used this before, but I'm going to give it a try. Now, personally, I do not communicate using email and I stay away from my inbox as much as possible, so I'm not going to do that. But I will do the to-do list thing and organize my calendar. So now I'm clear about my priorities for the day, but there's one more thing I'm going to do before diving into work. One of the things Matt advocates is minimalism. And personally, I'm also pretty fond of minimalism, but if I look at my desk, I'm not quite as minimal as I could be. So one of the things Matt talks about is having a really clear and clean work environment. I still, on my desk, have a couple of lenses here. I have the aircon remote. I have various hard drives here that I use to fling files around. And also a coin that's probably been here on the desk for several weeks because I just don't know what to do with coins anymore, right? When's the last time you used a coin? So yeah, somehow this just awkwardly lies here, waits for someone to pick it up, I guess. So I'll take just a couple of minutes to really clear my desk, make it super minimalist, and then we get into deeply focused work. Now it's time to work on the day's most important task. And unsurprisingly, Matt also recommends that we do deeply focused work here. Obviously, we want to be undistracted and be able to spend our full attention on the most important task. Now, one thing that can get in the way here is I work here in this office with other guys on the Ocario team, so it's easy to get interrupted by other people. And one thing that helps is using headphones. On the one hand, putting on the headphones, putting on noise cancellation gives you more of that kind of isolated, in the zone, in the pocket work mode. But it can also be used as an agreed upon sign. It's like when I'm wearing my headphones, don't interrupt me, I'm in deep focus work mode. Our next tip is about checklists. It's very productive to break processes down into individual repeatable steps and systematize your work. And one of the ways to do that and to make those processes more reliable, more repeatable, is to use checklists. Just like a pilot uses a checklist every time before takeoff, You'll have a checklist to run through every time you do the same kind of thing in your work or in your business.
So with the help of the Checklist Manifesto, as well as my checklist friend, Greg, I got started and I made a checklist for pretty much everything.
So to implement this idea, I'm going to think about one of the processes that we do on the Icario team repeatedly and see if I can create a checklist for that. This next tip is about scheduling. And this one I really like. So to do this, I'm going to create 2 alarms here, one at 2 p.m. and one at 3 p.m. And here's how Matt uses this. Depending on how his day starts, he decides if today he's going to end work at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. Those are the 2 options. He then sets the alarm for that time so that when it comes around, there is no way to miss it. And then obviously, when the alarm rings, that is the end of your work day. You shut down your work computer and you go do something else. I really like this tip because obviously it makes sense to have a clear schedule and a clear time to end your day and do other things. We all know that otherwise work can just take over the entire day and it drives us insane. But it's easier said than done. And actually setting an alarm and also setting that alarm pretty early, so you kind of force yourself to get an early start, be productive, and then stop working and go live your life. That is a really cool idea. Now it's almost time to get lunch, but before we do that, one more thing that Matt emphasizes is the importance of not only keeping your physical desk clean, but also keeping your desktop and computer clean. Now, I absolutely agree with that. This is what my desktop looks like at all times. And if you want to know more about how I optimize my virtual work environment, check out the videos we made on that topic. So now it's lunchtime and I'm following another piece of advice I got from Matt, which is to have lunch away from the computer. Let's admit it, how many of us will grab something for lunch and go straight back in front of the screens? Making sure that we actually step away from work and have lunch somewhere else gives us a break in the day and helps us eat more mindfully. There's also something counterintuitive here that I think is a really good idea. Because remember how my workday is actually ending pretty soon and here I am taking a lunch break. I think that can actually be an advantage. The temptation here would be to say, you know what, my day ends at 2 o'clock anyway, so I can just push lunch until a bit later. But that gets us stuck in that constant busy work mode in front of the computer, and that's not actually very productive. Following this approach means that you get some deeply focused work done, then you have a short break away from work, and afterwards, you have a pretty tight deadline between the end of lunch and the end of your workday. And that can be good because it helps you get really stuck in and get some work done with focus. And the final tip is about scheduling your rest times. I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear me say that, the hustle culture approach of just work all day, every day, non-stop until you make it is not something I advocate, and it's not something that Matt D'Avella advocates either. But he has a really interesting approach to making sure that you have a good balance between work and rest, which is to schedule your rest and not just make it like, oh yeah, I guess I should do that every once in a while. And he schedules it daily, weekly, and monthly. Now, we've already seen the daily example where you set a limit for when you end your workday, you set an alarm, and when that alarm rings, you end your workday. In addition to that, on a weekly basis, we want to take time off, which would be the weekend. And for Matt, the weekend is sacred. He doesn't let work interfere with actually getting time off and resting on the weekend. And then finally, on a monthly basis, you can also schedule longer getaways, longer rest times, maybe an extended weekend, and make sure you get that every single month. I think this is a really good approach, and being disciplined about getting your rest is one of the things that enables you to be more productive and work harder during work times. It kind of reminds me of how athletes have to be very disciplined about getting enough rest, not only about training hard. So with that, it's now just about 2 p.m. I've done a lot of this video recording and it's about time to end the workday. So I'm gonna walk away from the camera and walk away from the screens and go to the park and listen to an audiobook. All right, so what's the conclusion of this experiment? What did I learn? For me, there are 2 main takeaways from doing this. And the first is about what I'm doing right now, which is taking time off. I have to confess that for me, often I let work creep into other areas of my life a bit too much. I tend to get like too stuck in, and I'm not that great at taking a break and making sure I get away for the weekend and things like that. So from going through how Matt D'Avella approaches productivity, being more disciplined about how I schedule my off time, that is the number one lesson that I can and want to learn from how he does it. For my second conclusion, let me use the To-Do app as an example. So this is a nice enough app, but I'm not going to start using it because I already have an effective workflow using Notion. And here's the thing, the app you use really doesn't make that much of a difference. What really matters is how you use it, the principles by which you approach productivity. And with everything else, that's the feeling I got. Matt D'Avella has a different approach to how I do my productivity. It's different in details, but the principles are really all the same. And so I can confirm that yes, this is a way to be highly productive. So that's it for the Matt D'Avella experiment. Are there any other productivity gurus that you can recommend? Is there anyone else I should emulate and do a similar experiment on? Let me know by leaving a comment below. Also, if you want to learn an entire productivity system that turns you into a goal-crushing badass, check out Focus and Action. Focus and Action is a 9-week live program that myself and the other Icario coaches run, where we help you define your most important goals and we keep you accountable to actually reaching them. Plus, you learn the entire productivity system that I use, including all of the templates. And when you do this, when you learn how to work like this, you can get more work done by noon than most people get done all week. Check out Focus and Action. You can follow the link in the description to go learn more about it and see if there are currently any spots open. So with that said, I'm now gonna go take a break.